For 33 years, my parents looked right through me to admire my sister, Lila. I was just the background noise, the child who didn't require maintenance. That changed the afternoon I inherited $15 million from a woman who loved me better than my own mother ever did. Overnight. My family's indifference curdled into a hungry, suffocating kind of love. They thought the money was a miracle, but they forgot one thing. I am not the easy one anymore. The fog in Greyhaven had a weight to it that day, a damp, heavy blanket that rolled off the Atlantic and pressed against the windows of Larkspur Health Initiatives. I liked the fog. It made the world feel small, contained, and manageable. That was how I curated my life. Manageable, at 33. I was the woman who showed up 15 minutes early, the project manager who anticipated the budget overruns before they happened, and the daughter who never called home with an emergency. I was the reliable one, the steady one, the invisible one. My office was quiet. The only sound the hum of the HVAC system and the rhythmic clicking of my keyboard. I was finalizing the quarterly projections for our community outreach program. When my desk phone rang, it was a jarring, shrill sound in the silence. I checked the caller ID. It was a local number, but not one I recognized. I picked it up. Sadie Bryant, I said, my voice practiced and neutral. Is this Sadie Bryant, formerly associated with the Mercer Harbor Foundation mentorship program? A woman's voice asked. She sounded crisp, professional, and entirely devoid of warmth. Yes, that is me. This is Catherine from Holloway and Crane Legal Group. I am calling to inform you that Elaine Mercer passed away 3 days ago. We are the executors of her estate. We need you to come into our offices tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock. The air left the room. Elaine Mercer. I had not seen Elaine in 5 years. Not since I had taken this job at Larkspur and moved my life 3 towns over to get just enough distance from my past. But the name still carried a gravitational pull. Elaine had been my mentor during my early 20s. A formidable woman with steel gray hair and a spine that never seemed to bend. She was reclusive, sharp-tongued, and notoriously difficult to please. She was also the first adult who had ever looked at me and seen something other than a utility. I am so sorry to hear that, I managed to say, staring at the white wall of fog outside my window. I didn't know she was ill. It was sudden, Catherine said, her tone indicating that grief was not a billable hour. Ms. Mercer named you as a beneficiary in her will. The reading is private. Can we expect you? A beneficiary? I assumed she meant something sentimental. Elaine had a vast library of first-edition books on maritime history and sociology. Perhaps she had left me a stack of novels, or maybe the antique compass she kept on her desk, the one she used to fiddle with while she lectured me on the importance of self-reliance. I will be there, I said. I hung up the phone and sat in the silence. I felt a strange, hollow ache in my chest. It wasn't the shattering grief of losing a parent or a partner. It was the quiet mourning of a lighthouse going dark. Elaine had been a fixed point in my life, even when we weren't speaking. She was the one person who knew how hard I worked to be normal, to be functional, to be the opposite of my family. I didn't call my parents. I didn't call my sister, Lila. I went back to my spreadsheet, typed 3 numbers, and then deleted them. The fog pressed harder against the glass. Holloway and Crane was located in one of the preserved brownstones near the harbor, the kind of building that smelled of lemon polish and old money. The conference room was vast, dominated by a mahogany table that looked like it could seat a parliament. I sat at one end, feeling small in my gray wool coat. The attorney, Mr. Holloway, was a man in his 60s with a face that had settled into a permanent expression of serious consideration. He opened a thick leather binder. Sadie, he began, using my first name with a familiarity that made me uncomfortable. Elaine was very specific about her instructions. She wanted no funeral, no obituary, and no public reading of the will. She valued her privacy, as you know. I nodded. She hated attention. She did. He agreed. He adjusted his glasses. The estate has been liquidated and consolidated according to her wishes over the last 6 months. She was preparing for this. Preparing? I asked. She had a terminal diagnosis she chose not to share. He said. He slid a single sheet of paper across the polished wood. Elaine Mercer has named you the primary beneficiary of her estate. After taxes and the settlement of her minor debts, the total liquid assets amount to $15 million. The silence in the room was absolute. I heard the blood rushing in my ears, a sound like the ocean in a shell. I stared at him. I'm sorry? $15 million, he repeated, as calmly as if he were telling me the time. Additionally, the deed to her townhouse on Elm Street is transferred to your name, along with a small portfolio of philanthropic holdings that you are to manage or dissolve at your discretion. I looked down at the paper. The number was there, typed in bold black ink. It didn't look real. It looked like a typo. It looked like a mistake that would get someone fired. I don't understand, I whispered. Elaine lived in a 2-bedroom cottage. She drove a 10-year-old Volvo. She clipped coupons. Mr. Holloway offered a rare, thin smile. Elaine was a woman of significant quiet wealth. She believed that money was a tool, not a costume. She observed you for a long time. Sadie. She believed you were the only person she knew who would not be destroyed by this amount of resources. I felt nausea rise in my throat. It wasn't excitement. It wasn't joy. It was a cold, creeping terror. $15 million. My mind didn't go to vacations. It didn't go to clothes or houses. It went, instantly and violently, to my mother's kitchen table. I saw my sister, Lila, crying over a credit card bill she didn't want to pay. I saw my father, Victor, leaning back in his chair, shaking his head, saying, Sadie, can't you help her out? You know she's not good with numbers. You're the smart one. Be the bigger person. I saw my mother, Marlene, patting Lila's hand, looking at me with that expectant, demanding stare. We're a family. Sadie, what's yours is ours. My family can't find out. I said. The words left my mouth before I had even processed them. Mr. Holloway paused. He looked at me, really looked at me, for the first time. That is often a wise instinct, he said. You don't understand, I said, my voice trembling. If they know I have this. You are 33 years old. Mr. Holloway said firmly. This money is yours. It is separate property, unless you commingle it. No one has a claim to it, not a spouse, and certainly not parents or siblings. They won't care about the law. I said, they'll care about the guilt. I stood up, my legs feeling like water. I needed air. I needed to get out of this room that smelled of lemon polish and life-altering secrets. I drove to the pier and sat in my car, watching the gray waves slap against the pilings. I gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. $15 million. I closed my eyes and the memories came, unbidden. The greatest hits of the Bryant family dynamic. I was 10 years old. It was Christmas. Lila, 7, unwrapped a brand new bicycle, a shimmering pink thing with tassels on the handlebars. She screamed with delight. I unwrapped my gift. A helmet. We knew you'd want to be safe, my mother had said, beaming at her own practicality. And besides, Lila needs the bike more. She needs the exercise to burn off that energy. You're always so happy just reading your books. I remembered being 16. I had saved $300 from babysitting to buy a prom dress. 2 days before the dance, Lila had lost her winter coat at school. My father had come into my room, sat on the edge of my bed, and given me the speech. Sadie, honey, Lila is freezing. We're a little tight this month. You have that money sitting in the jar. You don't really need a fancy dress, do you? You're sensible. You understand. I gave them the money. I wore an old dress I borrowed from a cousin. Lila got a new coat, which she left on the bus 2 weeks later, when I cried about it. My mother sighed and said, Oh, Sadie, don't be so dramatic. It's just money. You can always earn more. You're the capable one. The capable one, the easy one, the one who didn't need anything. So she got nothing. And now I had everything. If Lila knew, She wouldn't see $15 million. She would see a blank check for every mistake she had ever made and every mistake she planned to make. She would see vindication. She would see it as her due. And my parents? They would look at me with a love I had starved for my entire life, but it would be a transaction. They would love me because I was finally the provider they wanted me to be. I couldn't let that happen. I started the car. I needed to tell someone, or I was going to explode. But I couldn't tell family. That left only one person. Tessa met me at a small, dimly lit wine bar on the edge of town, a place where the music was loud enough to cover conversation. Tessa had been my best friend since college. She was a cynical, sharp-edged woman who worked in high-end retail and had zero tolerance for nonsense. She knew my family. She hated my family. I sat down and ordered a sparkling water. I needed a clear head. "Okay," Tessa said, pulling off her scarf. "You look like you've seen a ghost, or like you're about to confess to a murder. Which is it?" "Elaine died," I said. Tessa's face softened. "Oh, Sadie, I'm so sorry. I know she meant a lot to you. She left me something." I said, "That's nice," Tessa said. "A book? A cat? $15 million. I said. Tessa froze. She had a glass of Pinot Noir halfway to her mouth. She lowered it slowly to the table. She looked at me, her eyes wide. "Say that again." $15 million. And a townhouse. She stared at me for a full 10 seconds. Then she reached across the table and gripped my hand hard enough to bruise. "Do not tell them," she hissed. "Do not tell your parents. Do not tell Lila. Do not even whisper it in their direction." "I know," I said, tears finally pricking my eyes. "I know." "Sadie, listen to me," Tessa said, her voice dropping to a fierce whisper. "Money changes people. It turns regular dysfunction into war. If Lila finds out, she will never work another day in her life. She will move into your house. She will make you feel like a monster every time you say no to a Gucci bag. And your mom? Marlene will think she won the lottery. I feel like I'm keeping a secret that's going to eat me." I said, "Let it eat you," Tessa said. "Better that than being eaten by them. You have to lock this down. You need a lawyer who isn't just an estate lawyer. You need a shark." The firm recommended Jillian Park. Her office was in the financial district, a glass tower that looked down on the rest of the city. Jillian was younger than I expected, maybe 40, with a bob cut so sharp it looked like it could cut glass. She listened to me for 20 minutes without interrupting, taking notes on a yellow legal pad. "So," Jillian said, leaning back, "the goal is total insulation." "Yes," I said. "I want to keep my job. I want to stay in my apartment for now. I don't want my life to look different on the outside." "Smart," she said. "Here's what we do. First, we set up a trust to hold the assets. Your name won't appear on public real estate records for the townhouse. We'll use a generic LLC name. Second, you need a new mailing address, a secure P.O. box for all estate correspondence. Nothing goes to your apartment. One slip of paper, one bank statement left on a counter. And you are exposed." I nodded. It felt like we were planning a heist, not managing an inheritance. "What about your parents?" Jillian asked. "They will notice changes eventually. You might buy a nicer coat. You might upgrade your car. I don't know what to tell them." "Say nothing," Jillian advised. "Or, if you must, give them a container. A small truth to hide the big lie inside. A container," I repeated. "If you say nothing, they might get suspicious of your secrets. If you say you got a $5,000 bonus, they will spend $5,000 in their heads and then move on. It satisfies the curiosity without triggering the greed. But be careful. Sadie, a lie is a debt. You have to service it." The dinner was scheduled for Sunday. It was the monthly obligation. A roast chicken at my parents' house in the suburbs of Greyhaven. The house was a shrine to Lila. Her high school drama trophies were still on the mantel. Photos of her, smiling and vibrant, lined the hallway. There were 2 photos of me, one from graduation where I looked tired, and one from a family vacation where I was half out of the frame. I parked my Honda Civic in the driveway. My hands were shaking. I turned off the engine and breathed. A container. I thought, just a container. I walked inside. The house smelled of rosemary and stale resentment. Sadie, you're late. My mother called from the kitchen. I'm on time. Mom, it's 6 o'clock exactly. Well, Lila has been here for an hour, she said, appearing in the doorway with a dish towel. She helped me with the salad. I knew this was a lie. Lila didn't make salads. Lila ate them. I walked into the dining room. Lila was sprawled on the couch, scrolling through her phone. She was 31, beautiful in a messy, chaotic way, with hair that was always perfectly tousled and clothes that cost more than my monthly rent. She looked up and gave me a dazzling, sleepy smile. Hey, Sades, she said. Long time no see. You look tired. Are you working too much? I'm fine, I said. Just busy. Victor, my father, walked in from the garage. He was a big man who had shrunk over the years, his bluster replaced by a vague, simmering impatience. Hey, Sadie, he grunted. We sat down to dinner. The dynamic established itself within seconds. So, Lila said, stabbing a potato, I have big news. I'm thinking of starting a podcast. That's wonderful. Honey, my mother exclaimed, passing her the bread basket. What about? Wellness, Lila said vaguely, and lifestyle stuff. I just need to get the equipment. It's an investment. Obviously, microphones are expensive, and I'd need a studio space. My apartment is too noisy. She looked at Victor. He sighed, but it was a soft sigh. We can look at the numbers. Sweetie, maybe we can help with the startup costs. I cut my chicken. The knife scraped against the plate. It was the same old song. Lila had an idea. The parents funded it. The idea evaporated, and the money vanished. Last year it was a jewelry line. The year before that, it was a dog walking agency. Sadie, how is work? My father asked, almost as an afterthought. Still pushing paper? I manage projects. Dad, I said, it's going well? Good, he said, his eyes already drifting back to Lila. I took a breath. The secret was burning a hole in my chest. I needed to say something. I needed to test the air. I needed to control the narrative before they found out from someone else. Actually, I said, keeping my voice level, I have some news too. They looked at me. The interest was mild, polite. Elaine Mercer passed away. I said, my mother frowned. Who? The woman I used to intern for. The one who wrote the recommendation for my scholarship. Oh, right, my mother said. The grumpy one. That's sad, I suppose. She left me something. I said. The fork paused halfway to Lila's mouth. Victor stopped chewing. The quality of the silence changed. It went from indifferent to alert. Left you something? Lila asked. Like money? I looked down at my plate. Yes, a small inheritance. She didn't have any family. It was unexpected. How much is small? My mother asked. Her voice had sharpened. It wasn't the voice of a grieving acquaintance. It was the voice of an accountant. I forced myself to shrug. Not much. Enough to maybe pay off my car. Put a little in savings. It was a modest gesture. I watched them calculate. I watched them do the math. A car payoff. Maybe $15,000? 20? That's nice, Lila said. But her tone was pouty. I mean, must be nice to just get free money. I have to work for everything I get. I almost laughed. I almost stood up and screamed. I have worked for every single thing I own while you have been subsidized since birth. But I didn't. I just nodded. Well, that's fortunate. My father said. He looked at me, and I saw a flicker of something new in his eyes. It wasn't pride. It was assessment. So, you're flush then? I'm okay. Dad, it's going into savings. Savings, Lila scoffed. You're so boring. Sadie, you should go to Cabo. Take us to Cabo. We laughed, but the laughter was thin. The rest of the dinner was strange. They kept glancing at me. Usually, I was invisible. Now, I was opaque. They were trying to see inside, trying to gauge the depth of my pockets. When I left, My mother hugged me. She held on a second longer than usual. "Drive safe," she said, "and call us more often. We worry about you." They never worried about me. They relied on me not to worry them. I got into my car and drove away, my heart hammering against my ribs. I had lied. I had given them a number they could comprehend, a number they could envy but ultimately dismiss. I thought I was safe. I was wrong. That night, I lay in bed in my rented apartment, staring at the ceiling. My phone buzzed on the nightstand. It was a text from my mother. "Hey, honey. Just thinking about you. So glad you came to dinner. We should do lunch next week. Just the two of us. Love you." Then another buzz. "Lila. Hey, Sades. Random question. Do you think that inheritance thing could cover a security deposit? My landlord is being a psycho, and I might need to move. Let me know. XOXO. Then a third buzz. "Victor, Sadie. When you have a minute, send me the details on that inheritance tax stuff. I want to make sure you don't get screwed by the IRS. I can help you manage it." I stared at the glowing screen in the dark. They hadn't texted me this much in 3 years combined. They smelled blood in the water. I had told them it was a modest amount. I had told them it was just enough for a car. But they were already circling, probing, pushing against the boundaries to see how much give there was. And the terrifying thought hit me. What if they didn't believe me? What if the modest lie wasn't a shield, but a challenge? I turned off the phone. I pulled the blanket up to my chin, but I couldn't sleep. I kept hearing the sound of the ocean, and the sound of my sister's voice saying, "Must be nice." The war had started, and I was the only one who knew the size of the battlefield. I rolled over and looked at the empty space of my bedroom. Somewhere in a vault downtown, there was a piece of paper that said I was worth $15 million. It was supposed to be freedom. But lying there in the dark, with my phone buzzing again, it didn't feel like freedom. It felt like bait, and the sharks were already swimming. The week following the dinner felt like living inside a tightening noose. It started with the phone calls. Before the dinner, my mother called me perhaps once every 2 weeks, usually to complain about a neighbor or to remind me of a birthday I had already put in my calendar. Now, my phone vibrated with a persistence that bordered on harassment. Tuesday, 10 o'clock in the morning, I was in a budget meeting. My phone buzzed against the table. Marlene Bryant. I silenced it. 2 minutes later, it buzzed again, then a text. "Call me. Important." I stepped out of the meeting, my heart hammering, assuming someone was in the hospital. "Mom, is everything okay?" "Sadie, thank God," she breathed, her voice thick with performative anxiety. "I have been sitting here worrying myself sick." "About what?" "About that money. Sadie, that inheritance. I was talking to your Aunt Carol, and she said that sometimes these estates are scams. People get taken advantage of. They sign things they do not understand and end up owing taxes they cannot pay. Are you sure you are not being taken advantage of?" I closed my eyes and leaned against the cool wall of the corridor. "Mom, I am fine. It is handled. It is a legitimate estate. But do you have a second set of eyes on it?" she pressed. "Your father is very good with contracts. He could just look over the paperwork for you, just to be safe. We just want to protect you." The word protect felt like a wire brush against my skin. In the Bryant Family Dictionary, protect was a synonym for control. I have a lawyer. Mom, a professional. Lawyers just want billable hours. She snapped, her tone sharpening instantly. "Family wants what is best for you. Why are you being so secretive? It makes you look guilty." "Guilty of what?" I asked. "Of hiding things from the people who love you." I hung up. My hands were shaking. It was a strategy I recognized from childhood. Create a crisis of competence. Make me doubt my own ability to tie my shoes so that I would have to ask for help. And in asking, surrender autonomy, but I wasn't 10 years old anymore. I went back into the meeting, but I couldn't focus on the spreadsheets. I kept seeing the flashing name on my screen. By Thursday, the assault shifted fronts. It was Lila's turn. Lila did not call with concern. She called with catastrophes. She had a radar for disposable income. If I got a raise, her car broke down. If I got a tax refund, she had a medical emergency that insurance wouldn't cover. Now that she smelled money, even the modest amount I had admitted to, her life began to disintegrate with suspicious speed. She requested a lunch. I agreed, mostly to get her to stop texting me links to luxury condos she couldn't afford. We met at a bistro near the harbor, a place where the salads cost $20. Lila ordered the most expensive item on the menu and a glass of wine, even though it was noon on a workday. "So," she said, leaning forward, her eyes bright and predatory, "I have been thinking about what you said, about the inheritance. It is going into savings." "Lila," I said, cutting her off before she could build momentum. Right, savings, responsible Sadie." She rolled her eyes playfully, but the smile didn't reach her gaze. "But listen, I have a situation. My car is making this death rattle sound. The mechanic says the transmission is shot. It is going to cost $4,000 to fix. And honestly, the car isn't even worth that." "That sounds stressful," I said, keeping my voice neutral. "It is a nightmare. I can't get to auditions. I can't get to meetings." She waved her hand vaguely, and I was thinking, since you have this windfall, maybe this is the universe balancing things out. You could help me get a lease on a new Range Rover. The down payment is like $5,000, and I could make the monthly payments. Mostly, I looked at her, a Range Rover. I drove a 5-year-old Civic. "Lila," I said gently, "if you need a reliable car, why don't you look at a used Toyota or a Honda? They are safe and affordable." Her face crumpled. "A Toyota?" "Sadie, I am in media. Image matters. I can't pull up to a client meeting in a Corolla. It looks desperate. You don't have clients. I thought, you have Instagram followers. I can't give you $5,000 for a down payment." I said, "But I can help you look over the repair estimate for your current car. Sometimes mechanics inflate the prices." Lila recoiled, as if I had slapped her. "You are unbelievable," she hissed. "You come into this free money you didn't even earn, by the way, and you won't even help your own sister? After everything Mom and Dad did for you?" I stared at her. "What did they do for me?" "Lila, they fed me. They clothed me. That is what parents do. They didn't buy me a career. They didn't pay my rent for a decade." "You are so selfish," she muttered, signaling the waiter for another glass of wine. Mom was right. Money changes people. I paid the bill. She didn't even reach for her purse. As I walked back to my office, I felt a heavy, cold stone settling in my stomach. They didn't want me to have money. They wanted the money to pass through me, like water through a filter. Until it reached them, I was just the obstacle in the middle. The following week, the patriarch stepped in. Victor Bryant did not do lunch. He did coffee, black, in serious places with hard chairs. He texted me on Monday. "Coffee, Wednesday, 8 a.m., the roastery. Be there." It wasn't a question. It was a summons. I arrived 5 minutes early. He was already there, sitting at a corner table, reading a newspaper. He looked the part of the respectable family man. Ironed shirt, silver hair, grave expression. To the outside world, Victor was a pillar of the community. To me, he was a wall I had been banging my head against for 30 years. "Sit down. Sadie," he said, folding the paper. I sat. He didn't ask how I was. He didn't ask about my job. "We need to talk about family unity," he said. I waited. "Your mother is upset," he continued. "She feels you are shutting us out. She feels you are being secretive. And frankly, I agree with her. I am not shutting you out. Dad, I am 33 years old. My finances are private. Privacy is for strangers. Sadie, family is about transparency." He took a sip of his coffee. "Now, this inheritance. I did some research on Elaine Mercer. She was not just a comfortable woman, she was wealthy, very wealthy." My heart skipped a beat. "How did you research her?" "The internet is a powerful tool," he said dismissively. "She owned property. She was on boards. If she left you something, It wasn't just a few $1,000s. I kept my face perfectly still. It was a modest bequest. "Dad, stop lying to me," he said. The tone was low, calm, and terrifying. It was the voice he used when I was a teenager and missed curfew. The voice that said, "I own you. I am not lying." I said, though I was, "Listen to me." He leaned in. "This family has struggled. We have had ups and downs. I have worked my fingers to the bone to provide for you girls. Lila needs help to get her footing. Your mother and I need to think about retirement. If you have come into resources, you have a moral obligation to the collective. You don't just hoard it. That is greed. It is not greed to keep what was given to me." I said, "It was given to you because of the values we raised you with." He countered, "If we hadn't raised you to be polite and hardworking, this woman wouldn't have looked twice at you. In a way, that money belongs to the parenting that made you." I stared at him, stunned by the mental gymnastics. He was claiming ownership of my inheritance based on the fact that he had raised me. "I want you to bring the paperwork to the house on Sunday," he said. "All of it, the will, the bank statements, everything. We will sit down as a family and figure out the best allocation. We can set up a family trust. I will manage it. It will take the burden off you." He wasn't asking. He was telling me how it was going to be. "I will not be doing that," I said. His eyes narrowed. "Excuse me?" I said no. "I'm not bringing my financial records to Sunday dinner. I am not setting up a family trust." Victor stared at me for a long time. The air between us crackled. He wasn't used to resistance from me. Lila fought him with screaming matches that ended in tears and capitulation. I had never fought. I had always just quietly obeyed. "You are making a mistake." "Sadie," he said softly, "you are choosing money over your own blood. And let me tell you, money is cold comfort when you are alone." He stood up, dropped a $5 bill on the table, and walked out without looking back. I sat there for 20 minutes, shaking. I realized then that my father didn't love me. He loved my utility, and now that I was refusing to be utilized, I was useless to him. The leak happened 2 days later. I was at my desk at Larkspur when my cell phone rang. It was Jillian Park. I answered immediately. "Sadie, are you somewhere you can talk?" "Yes." I closed my office door. "What is it?" "We had an incident this morning," Jillian said. Her voice was crisp, professional, but laced with warning. "A woman called the firm asking for a copy of the Mercer estate distribution schedule. She identified herself as your personal assistant." I froze. "I don't have a personal assistant." "I know that," Jillian said. "And fortunately, my paralegal knows that. The caller had your social security number. Sadie, or at least the last 4 digits. She also knew the date of Elaine's death and the general nature of the bequest." My stomach dropped. It was Lila. It had to be. She had seen my social security card 1,000 times growing up. "What did you tell her?" "We told her nothing. We hung up and flagged the file." "But Sadie, this means they are fishing, and they are fishing with specific bait. They know there is an estate. They know the firm's name." How did they get the firm's name? I thought back to the dinner. I hadn't mentioned Holloway and Crane. I was sure of it. I didn't tell them. I said, "I swear." "Did you leave any paperwork in your car?" Jillian asked. "Any letters on your counter when someone visited?" "No. Wait. I remembered the day of the funeral. Or rather, the day I went to the pier. I had the initial letter from Holloway and Crane in my purse. I had left my purse in my parents' hallway for 10 minutes while I helped my mother carry in groceries from the garage. They went through my purse. I whispered, "It is a possibility." Jillian said, "Listen to me. This escalates things. Impersonating an authorized representative is fraud. We can send a cease and desist, but that might inflame the situation." "Don't send it yet." I said, "Let me handle it." I hung up and drove straight to my parents' house. I didn't call first. I was done with politeness. My mother was in the garden, pruning hydrangeas. She looked up, surprised to see me in the middle of a workday. "Sadie, is everything all right? Did you go through my purse?" I asked. I stood on the walkway, 10 feet from her. I didn't shout. I just asked the question. Marlene blinked. Her face went through a rapid series of expressions. Confusion, offense, and then a flicker of guilt that she immediately covered with outrage. What? Sadie, what are you talking about? Someone called my lawyer today. I said, they pretended to be my assistant. They had information that could only be found in the letter I had in my purse 2 weeks ago. Did you go through my bag? Mom? Marlene stabbed the shears into the dirt. How dare you, she said. You come into my house, disrupt my day, and accuse me of being a thief? I am your mother. You didn't answer the question. I was looking for a tissue, she shouted. I needed a tissue and your bag was right there. I saw a letter. I glanced at it. Is that a crime? To be concerned about my daughter's legal troubles? It wasn't a legal trouble. It was a private letter. And who called the firm? Was it you? Or did you tell Lila? Marlene wiped her hands on her apron. You are acting crazy. Sadie, you are paranoid. This money is making you sick. Look at you. You are shaking. You are attacking your family. I am not attacking. I said, I am setting a boundary. If anyone calls my lawyer again, if anyone tries to access my accounts, I will file a police report. Marlene gasped. She pressed a hand to her chest. A police report? On your own blood? You would send your sister to jail? If she commits fraud? Yes. Marlene stared at me with pure venom. I don't know who you are anymore. Elaine Mercer poisoned you against us. She always thought she was better than everyone. And now she has made you just like her. Cold, heartless. I turned and walked away. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt like I had just cut off a limb without anesthesia. The fallout was immediate. The strategy shifted from private pressure to public shaming. Lila blocked me on social media, but that didn't stop her from posting. Tessa sent me screenshots. Lila Bryant posted a story. It is funny how money reveals who people really are. Some people get a little bit of power and forget where they came from. Hashtag family first. Hashtag fake people. Hashtag betrayal. Then, a photo of her crying in her car. Caption. So stressed about the car situation. Wish I had the kind of support system I thought I had. Sending love to everyone who actually cares about me. It was vague enough to be deniable, but specific enough to trigger the flying monkeys. My cousin, a woman I hadn't spoken to in 5 years, sent me a Facebook message. Hey Sadie, saw Lila's post. Is everything okay? She seems really down. I heard you came into some money? That's awesome. Hope you're sharing the wealth, lol. Then an aunt. Sadie, call your mother. She is devastated. She says you threatened to arrest her? What is wrong with you? I deleted the messages. I didn't respond, but the silence in my apartment felt heavy. I was becoming the villain in a story I hadn't even written. Lila began to rewrite history, in her narrative, which filtered back to me through mutual acquaintances. The money wasn't just mine. It was reparation for all the resources our parents had diverted to me over the years. This was the most galling lie of all. Lila claimed that I was the expensive child, that I was the one who had drained the family coffers with, what? Books? A state college tuition I paid half of with loans? But the truth didn't matter. The narrative mattered. And Lila was a master storyteller. She was painting a picture of a greedy, ungrateful daughter who had struck gold and slammed the door in the face of her suffering. Saintly parents, Sadie, we need to talk, Tessa said. She had come over to my apartment with a bottle of wine and a grim expression. What is it? I asked. I was at the gym today. I ran into Sarah Jenkins. You know, from high school? I nodded. She asked me if it was true that you inherited $50 million and are letting your parents lose their house. I dropped my face into my hands. 50 million? And my parents own their house outright. Tessa poured the wine. It doesn't matter. The rumor is out. And it is mutating. People in this town love a villain. Sadie. And right now, you are Scrooge McDuck. I feel sick. I said, I haven't even spent a dime of it. I am still driving my Honda. I am still eating leftovers. You need to protect yourself. Tessa said, not just your reputation, your actual life. If people think you have $50 million, you become a target. I went back to Jillian. We need a firewall, she said. She looked tired. She had probably fielded another call from my assistant. What does that look like? We put everything in a blind trust, she explained. We remove your name from every document we can. We set up a screening service for your calls, and we send a formal letter to your family's attorney, if they have one, stating that all future communication regarding the estate must go through this office. They don't have an attorney. I said, they will. She predicted, once they realize guilt isn't working, they will try law. I signed the papers. I felt a strange mix of relief and profound sadness. I was effectively divorcing my family. I was building a legal wall where love should have been, but I had to do it. The relentless probing, the entitlement, the lies. It was consuming me. I needed space to breathe. I needed to figure out who Sadie Bryant was when she wasn't being crushed by the expectations of the Bryant family. The cliff edge appeared on a Friday afternoon. I was at work, finally feeling a moment of peace. The trust was set up. I had blocked my family's numbers for the weekend. I was looking forward to a quiet 2 days of reading and silence. An email popped into my inbox. It was forwarded from the Director of Compliance at Larkspur. The subject line was, "Urgent, anonymous report." My heart hammered against my ribs. I opened it. Sadie. The director had written, "Please see the below email received through our ethics hotline. We need to discuss this immediately. Please come to my office." I scrolled down to the forwarded message. "To whom it may concern. I am writing to report a concern regarding your employee, Sadie Bryant. It has come to my attention that Ms. Bryant may be involved in financial misconduct regarding the estate of a former donor to your organization, Elaine Mercer. There are questions regarding the validity of the will and whether Miss Bryant used her position at your nonprofit to unduly influence an elderly, vulnerable woman into changing her estate plan. Larkspur Health Initiatives relies on public trust. Employing someone who preys on the elderly for financial gain is a liability. Sincerely, a concerned citizen." The room spun. It wasn't just a rumor at the grocery store anymore. It wasn't just a guilt trip at the dinner table. They had come for my job. They had come for my career. They knew Elaine was a donor to Larkspur. She had given small amounts years ago. They had weaponized my own professionalism against me. Undue influence. That was a legal term. That wasn't Lila ranting. That was Victor. I stared at the screen, the white light burning into my retinas. I realized then that I had underestimated them. I thought they were just greedy and emotional. I thought they would scream and cry and eventually go away. But they weren't going away. They were willing to burn my life to the ground. If they couldn't control me, they would destroy me. I stood up. I didn't feel the fear anymore. I felt something else. A cold, hard clarity. They wanted a war? They just got one. The office of the compliance officer at Larkspur Health Initiatives was a windowless box painted a shade of beige that seemed designed to drain the color from anyone who sat inside it. I sat in a hard plastic chair, my hands folded in my lap to hide the fact that they were trembling. Across the desk, Marcus, a man I had shared elevator small talk with for 3 years, looked at me with a pained expression. He held a printout of the email. "Sadie," he said, his voice dropping to a confidential murmur. "You understand we have to investigate every claim, even the anonymous ones. Especially the anonymous ones that use words like financial misconduct." "I understand," I said. My voice was steady, but my stomach was a knot of cold iron. I did not engage in misconduct. Elaine Mercer was a mentor to me years ago. I did not know she was a donor to Larkspur until after her death. I certainly did not influence her estate planning. Marcus nodded slowly. He tapped the paper. "The email alleges that you used your position here to gain access to vulnerable elderly donors. It implies a pattern. There is no pattern. Marcus, there is one inheritance, from a woman who was sound of mind until the day she died." He sighed. "I believe you. I have reviewed your file. You have no history of donor interaction in your role as project manager. You are back of house. Logic suggests this accusation is baseless." He slid the paper into a folder. "I am closing this inquiry for lack of evidence. But Sadie, I have to warn you, nonprofits live and die by reputation. If we receive more of these, If this becomes a noise that the board can hear, it becomes a problem regardless of the truth. We cannot have a cloud hanging over our staff. I felt the blood drain from my face. It was a polite way of saying, if your family keeps trying to destroy you, we will fire you to save ourselves. I understand. I repeated, it will not happen again. I walked out of his office and into the hallway. The fluorescent lights hummed above me. I felt exposed, stripped naked in the middle of my workplace. My family had crossed a line. They hadn't just come for the money, they had come for my livelihood. They were willing to burn down the safe, quiet life I had built, just to see if they could sift through the ashes for gold. I went to my car. I didn't go back to my desk. I sat in the driver's seat, the engine cold, and I felt the sadness inside me harden into something sharp and dangerous. I took out my phone. I dialed my mother. She picked up on the second ring. Sadie? We were just talking about you. Stop, I said. There was a pause. Excuse me? I said, stop. I just came out of a meeting with compliance at my job. Someone sent an anonymous email accusing me of financial elder abuse. Marlene gasped. It sounded theatrical. A sharp intake of breath practiced for an audience. Oh my God, that is terrible. Who would do such a thing? You know who did it. Mom, or Lila did, or Dad did. It doesn't matter. Sadie, how can you accuse us? We are your family. Listen to me, I said, cutting through her protests. I am done. I am setting a boundary right now. If you want to speak to me, we can talk about the weather. We can talk about the Red Sox. But if you mention money, if you mention Elaine, if you ask me for a loan, or a car, or a cosign, I will hang up. And if I hear one more whisper of professional sabotage, I will stop talking to you entirely. Sadie, you are being hysterical, she said, her voice rising to a pitch of wounded martyrdom. We are just worried. You are shutting us out. You are acting like a stranger. I am acting like an adult who is being harassed. I said, let me talk to her. I heard my father say in the background. There was a shuffling sound, and then Victor's voice came on the line. It was cold, heavy, and devoid of affection. Sadie, Dad, did you hear what I said? I heard you, he said. You are threatening your mother. I am protecting my job. You are confused. Sadie, you think you are independent because you have a little money now, but you are forgetting who put you in that chair. You are forgetting who raised you. I didn't forget. Dad, I remember everything. If you want to play this game, Victor said, his voice dropping to a terrifying whisper, you better be ready for the rules to change. I hung up. I stared at the phone. My hand was shaking, but not from fear. It was adrenaline. I had finally said it. I had drawn the line in the sand, but the tide was coming in. 2 days later, on a Saturday, I went to the townhouse. The property Elaine had left me was on Elm Street, in the historic district of Greyhaven. It was a beautiful, federal-style brick home with black shutters and a small, manicured garden in the front. I hadn't moved in yet. I was still terrified to touch it, as if occupying the space would make the reality too big to ignore. I was there to meet a cleaning crew I had hired to do a deep dust. I unlocked the front door and stepped into the foyer. It smelled of lavender and old wood. It smelled like Elaine. I was in the kitchen, checking the pilot light on the stove. When I heard the front door open, I froze. I had locked it behind me. Hello? I called out, grabbing a heavy brass candlestick from the mantel. Sadie, it's me. Lila walked into the kitchen as if she were walking onto a stage. She was wearing oversized sunglasses and carrying a venti iced coffee. She looked around the room, her eyes widening. Wow, she said. Okay. This is actually cute. I thought it would be musty, but it has potential. How did you get in here? I asked, lowering the candlestick. The door was unlocked. She lied. I knew she was lying because I remembered the click of the deadbolt. She must have picked it, or the lock was old and temperamental, or maybe she had found a spare key under a mat I hadn't checked. What are you doing here, Lila? Mom said you were coming over to check the place out. I thought I would come support you, sisterly bonding. She brushed past me and ran her hand along the granite countertop. "This is real stone," she noted. "Nice. The light in here is great, too." She pulled out her phone. She held it up, angling it so her face was in the frame with the kitchen behind her. "Hey guys," she chirped, her voice shifting into her influencer persona. Bright, airy, and completely fake. "Just checking out the new family property today. Look at these high ceilings. We are thinking of turning this downstairs area into a studio/workspace. It is going to be so vibey." I stepped into the frame and put my hand over the camera lens. "Hey," she snapped, dropping the phone. "What is your problem?" "Get out," I said. Lila blinked. "What?" "Get out of my house. And stop filming. This is not a family property. This is my house." She laughed. A sharp, incredulous sound. "Oh, come on. Sadie, don't be a brat. You have this whole place to yourself. What are you going to do with 3 bedrooms? You are single. You don't even have a cat. That is none of your business." "I was just thinking," she continued, ignoring me. "Since my lease is up next month, and this place is paid off, it would make so much sense for me to take the garden suite. It has its own entrance. I wouldn't even be in your way, and I could help you decorate. You have terrible taste. No offense." I stared at her. The audacity was breathtaking. She wasn't asking. She was informing me of her colonization plan. "Lila," I said, my voice low, "I am not renting to you. I am not letting you move in. I want you to leave. Now." Her face hardened. The bubbly influencer mask fell away, revealing the sneer beneath. "You are such a bitch," she said. "You think you are better than us now? You think because some old lady felt sorry for you, you are suddenly the queen of Greyhaven?" I walked to the front door and held it open. "Goodbye, Lila." She marched down the hallway, her heels clicking on the hardwood. She stopped at the door and turned back to me. Her eyes were cold, like smooth stones. "You know," she said, "Dad is right. You don't deserve this, and we are going to fix it." She slammed the door so hard the windows rattled. I locked it, then I slid the deadbolt. Then I dragged a heavy oak chair from the hallway and wedged it under the handle. I slid down to the floor and put my head in my knees. I wasn't safe anywhere. On Monday morning, Jillian Park called me into her office. She didn't offer me coffee. She sat behind her desk, her expression grim. "We have a problem," she said. "My assistant again?" I asked. "No, a lawyer. A real one. I received a courtesy call from a colleague at Briarwood and Sloan. It seems your sister has retained them." My stomach turned over. Briarwood and Sloan was the most aggressive litigation firm in the city. They were expensive. They were sharks. How can she afford them? I asked. "Lila has $400 in her checking account." Jillian tapped her pen on the desk. "Many firms will take a case on contingency if the pot is big enough, and $15 million is a very big pot. Or, your father is leveraging assets to pay the retainer." "What are they claiming?" "Undue influence," Jillian said. "They are preparing to argue that Elaine Mercer was in cognitive decline, and that you, using your position of trust, either as a former mentee or through your nonprofit work, coerced her into changing her will. They will argue the will does not reflect her true intentions, which, according to them, would have been to leave her estate to her beloved friends. The Bryant family. That is insane." I said, "Elaine hadn't spoken to my parents in 20 years. It doesn't have to be true. Sadie, it just has to be litigable. They are counting on the fact that you will want to avoid a public trial. They want a settlement. They want you to write a check for $5 million to make them go away. I won't do it." I said instantly. "Good," Jillian said, "because if you feed the beast, it never stops eating. But you need to understand what this means. They will depose you. They will subpoena your emails. They will drag Elaine's medical records into the open. It will be ugly. I need to know why." I said, "Why what? Why Elaine left it to me? I mean, I know she liked me. But $15 million? And why does my father think he has a claim?" He said something to me. He said he did research. He acted like he knew her better than I thought. Jillian nodded slowly. Discovery goes both ways. Sadie, if they sue, we get to look at their records too. But if you want answers now, you have the right to access Elaine's personal effects. The safe deposit box at the bank hasn't been cleared out yet. The key was in her desk. The bank vault was cool and smelled of dust and old metal. The bank manager left me alone in a small private room with a long, narrow metal box. I opened it. Inside, there were stacks of bonds, which the estate had already accounted for. There were deeds to properties sold long ago, and there was a packet of letters, tied with a blue ribbon. I untied the ribbon. The letters were addressed to me, but they were never mailed. October 14th, 2015. Dear Sadie, I saw your name in the paper today for the Dean's List. I am not surprised. You always had a quiet diligence that your family lacks. June 2nd, 2018. Dear Sadie, I saw you at the coffee shop today. You looked tired. I almost came over. But I know how your mother hovers. I didn't want to cause a scene. I read them, tears blurring my vision. She had been watching. She had been rooting for me from the shadows. At the bottom of the stack was a thick, sealed envelope. On the front, in Elaine's spidery, elegant handwriting, it said, "For Sadie, to be opened only when the wolves come." I broke the seal. My dear Sadie, if you are reading this, I am gone, and your family has found out about the money. I am sorry for the burden I have placed on you. I debated leaving it to charity, but I decided that you deserved a chance to be free. You have likely wondered why I cut ties with the Bryants so many years ago. You were young, just a child, so you wouldn't remember the Mercer Harbor Foundation. Your parents sat on my board. They were charming. They were eager, and for 2 years, they were systematically siphoning funds meant for maritime preservation to pay for their lifestyle. It wasn't enough to prosecute without destroying the foundation's reputation, which I refused to do, but it was enough to be morally unforgivable. I caught them. I gave them a choice: resign and vanish, or go to prison. They chose to resign, but they never forgave me for seeing who they really were. They hate you, Sadie, not because you are bad, but because you are good. You are the mirror that shows them their own ugliness. I watched you grow up in that house. The only one with integrity. The only one who wouldn't cheat, even when it was the easier path. I am leaving you this money not just because I love you, but because I know you are the only one who will not let it rot your soul. Stand tall. Do not give them a penny. They have already stolen enough. Love, Elaine. I put the letter down. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely fold the paper. It wasn't just favoritism. It wasn't just that they liked Lila better. They were thieves. My parents, the respectable Victor and Marlene Bryant, were embezzlers who had been caught and shamed, and they had spent my entire life projecting that shame onto me, punishing me for being the honest one. The anger that rose in me then was not hot. It was absolute zero. It froze my tears. It clarified the world. I didn't go to their house. I called my father. "Sadie," he answered. "I am glad you called. We are ready to accept your apology." I found the letters. "Dad." Silence. I was at the bank. I said, I opened Elaine's safe deposit box. I read the letter about the Mercer Harbor Foundation. The silence on the other end stretched out, thick and suffocating. I could hear his breathing change. It became shallow, rapid. "I don't know what you're talking about," he said. But his voice lacked its usual confident boom. It sounded thin. She wrote it all down. "Dad, the siphoning of funds, the choice she gave you, prison or resignation. Sadie, listen to me. No, you listen. You have been acting like I owe you this money, like I am the one who betrayed the family, but you stole from her. You stole from a non-profit, and she spared you." "That woman was a vindictive harpy," Victor snapped, his composure shattering. He was yelling now, a raw, panicked sound. "She didn't understand how business works. She held that over our heads for 20 years. She held the truth over your heads." I said, "Stop digging." "Sadie," he roared, "I am warning you. You think you are so smart? You think you can just dig up the past and wave it around? You have no idea what you are doing. I know exactly what I'm doing. I said, I am realizing that my entire childhood was a lie. You didn't favor Lila because she was better. You favored her because she was like you. And you hated me because I reminded you of what you aren't. You ungrateful little... I hung up. I sat in my car in the bank parking lot. I felt lightheaded. The secret was out. The weapon was in my hand. But I didn't feel safe. A cornered animal is the most dangerous kind. And I had just backed Victor Bryant into a corner. 2 days later, the ambush came. I received a text from my cousin. Ben, hey Sadie, I'm in town for the day. Can we grab a quick coffee? I'd love to catch up. No drama. I promise. Just missed you. I hesitated. Ben and I had been close as kids. He was the one person in the extended family who treated me like a human being. I wanted to believe him. I wanted to believe that not everyone was infected. Sure. I texted back, the grind on Main, 4 p.m. I walked into the coffee shop at 4 o'clock. It was a small, independent place with high-backed booths. I saw Ben waving from the back. I walked over, a small smile on my face. Then I saw who was sitting with him. Lila was there, Marlene was there, and a man I didn't recognize, a heavy-set man in a cheap suit who looked like a deacon. I stopped. It was a trap. Ben looked down at the table, shamefaced. Sorry. Sadie. They said it was an intervention. They said you were in trouble. I turned to leave. Sit down. Sadie, Marlene said. Her voice was steel. Don't make a scene. People are watching. I looked around. A few people were glancing our way. Greyhaven was small. Gossip traveled faster than light. If I ran out, it would look like hysteria. I sat down on the edge of the booth. I didn't take off my coat. What is this? I asked. This is a family meeting, the stranger said. He had a soothing, oily voice. I am Reverend Miller. Your mother asked me to mediate. I don't know you. I said, we are here to heal. Lila said. She looked pious. Her hands folded on the table. Sadie, we are worried about your soul, this money. It is driving a wedge. We just want to remove the wedge. She slid a document across the table. It was titled, Bryant Family Shared Asset Agreement. I didn't pick it up. I just read the upside-down text. It outlined a structure where all windfall assets would be placed into a common fund managed by Victor Bryant, with equitable distribution to all family members. Sign it, Marlene said. Just sign it, and this whole nightmare goes away. We can be a family again. We can forgive you for the things you said to your father. Forgive me? I asked. I looked at Ben. He wouldn't meet my eyes. Ben, do you know what this is? This is extortion. Sadie. Ben mumbled. Maybe it's easier. They're really upset. I looked at the document. It was a surrender. It was a promise to return to the role of the submissive. Silent provider. No, I said. Sadie. Reverend Miller said, consider the scripture. Honor thy father and thy mother. Thou shalt not steal. I countered. Marlene flinched. I am not signing this. I said, I am not giving you the money. I am not putting Dad in charge of a single dime. And Ben? Lose my number. I stood up. Lila stood up too. Her chair scraped loudly against the floor. You selfish bitch! She screamed. The entire coffee shop went silent. You think you're special? You're nothing. You're just a stingy, lonely spinster who stole our future. Sit down. Lila, Marlene hissed, grabbing her arm. I didn't look back. I walked to the door, my heart pounding in my throat. I felt the eyes of the town on me. I felt the heat of Lila's hatred. I got to my car and locked the doors. I sat there for 5 minutes, just breathing. I had walked into the trap, and I had walked out. But I knew it wasn't over. The process server came the next morning. He caught me in the parking lot of Larkspur. He was a bored-looking man with a clipboard. Sadie Bryant? Yes, you have been served. He handed me a thick envelope and walked away. I opened it right there, standing on the asphalt. State of Massachusetts. Probate and Family Court. Plaintiff. Lila Bryant. Defendant. The estate of Elaine Mercer, Nature of action. Petition to contest will / allegation of undue influence / lack of testamentary capacity. I read the first page. It was full of lies. It claimed Elaine was confused. It claimed I had isolated her. It claimed I had manipulated a sick old woman. But the most chilling part was the affidavit attached to the back. It was signed by Victor Bryant. I, Victor Bryant, swear under penalty of perjury that Elaine Mercer expressed to me on multiple occasions her intention to support the entire Bryant family. He was lying under oath. He was risking prison again. That was how desperate they were. That was how much they hated the idea of me having power. I looked at the courthouse stamp. It was real. The emotional war was over. The guilt trips. The awkward dinners. The phone calls. That was the prologue. Now, we were in court. I looked up at the gray sky. I didn't feel like crying anymore. I felt like a soldier who had finally seen the enemy's face clearly. I dialed Jillian. They filed. I said, "I know." She said, "I just got the electronic notice. Are you okay?" "No." I said, "I'm not okay. I'm ready." The transition from family conflict to legal warfare was not an explosion. It was a slow, suffocating accumulation of paper. My life, which had once been defined by the quiet rhythms of project management and solitary evenings, was now measured in billable hours, affidavits, and the relentless ping of email notifications from Jillian Park. Litigation, I learned, was mostly boring. It was the boredom of anxiety. It was waiting for the phone to ring. It was reading 30-page documents that said the same thing in 5 different ways. It was a war of attrition where the ammunition was patience and the casualty was my peace of mind. I sat in Jillian's conference room on a Tuesday morning, staring at a stack of motions. The sky outside was a bruised purple, threatening snow. "This is the discovery schedule," Jillian said, sliding a timeline across the table. "They have requested your financial records going back 5 years. They want your emails with Elaine. They want your phone logs. They want to see if I manipulated her." I said, my voice flat, "They want to find anything they can twist." Jillian corrected, "They are looking for a needle in a haystack, but they are willing to burn the haystack to find it. We are objecting to the scope. Of course, it is overly broad and harassing, but Sadie, you need to prepare yourself. They are going to paint a picture of you that you will not recognize." I looked at the timeline. Deposition of Sadie Bryant, February 14th, Valentine's Day. I noted, "Poetic, isn't it?" Jillian said dryly. "Look, Sadie, the law is not about truth, it is about narrative. Lila's lawyers are telling a story about a fragile old woman and a predatory, jealous sister. Our job is not just to deny it. Our job is to tell a better story. The true story. That Elaine was sharp as a tack, and she saw your family clearly." I nodded. I felt tired in my bones. A deep, cellular exhaustion that sleep couldn't touch. While the lawyers fought over documents, Lila fought for the court of public opinion. She had blocked me, but she hadn't blocked the world. Greyhaven was a small city, but it was a small town at heart. Everyone knew everyone, and Lila made sure everyone knew her version of the truth. Tessa came over on Thursday night with takeout and her phone. "Don't show me," I said, staring at my pad thai. "You need to know," Tessa said gently. "Ignorance isn't bliss. Sadie, it is tactical blindness." She turned the screen toward me. It was a TikTok video. Lila was sitting on the floor of her apartment, wearing no makeup, looking artfully disheveled. The lighting was dim, soft. Sad piano music played in the background. "Hey guys," Lila whispered into the camera. "I haven't been posting much lately. I am going through something really hard. It is just... Family betrayal is a different kind of pain. When you realize that the people you trusted, the people you thought were your team, are actually just out for themselves. It breaks you." She wiped away a tear that looked suspiciously timed. "My sister and I used to be close. But money changes people. It turns them cold. I am just trying to protect my parents. They are elderly, and they are being cut out of something that was promised to them. It is elder abuse, honestly, but I am staying strong. For them." The caption read, Hashtag family trauma. Hashtag betrayal. Hashtag narcissistic abuse. Hashtag healing. I felt a surge of nausea. Narcissistic abuse? I was the one hiding in my apartment while she weaponized the internet. I scrolled to the comments. Stay strong. Lila, you are a warrior. Money is the root of all evil. Your sister sounds toxic. Wait, is this about the Mercer estate? I heard she manipulated that old lady. Then, a message popped up on my own Instagram. From a girl I had sat next to in biology class 15 years ago. Hey Sadie, I saw Lila's post. I am really disappointed in you. Your parents are such nice people. How can you leave them struggling like that? You should be ashamed. I dropped the phone on the couch. They are struggling? I asked the empty room. They live in a 4-bedroom house. They drive new cars. Dad belongs to the country club. People believe what is loud, Tessa said, pouring wine into 2 mugs. And Lila is a megaphone. I feel like I'm going crazy. I said, I feel like I am the one who is wrong. Maybe I am selfish. Maybe I should just give them some of it, just to make it stop. Tessa slammed her mug down. No, she said firmly. That is the trap. That is exactly what they want. They want to make you so uncomfortable, so shamed, that you pay a ransom for your own reputation. If you pay them, you are admitting they are right. You are admitting you owe them. I know, I whispered. I hate being the villain. You are not the villain. Sadie, you are the protagonist in a thriller. And the protagonist always gets beat up in the second act. I needed to reconnect with Elaine. I needed to remember why this was happening. Why she had chosen me. I went back to the paperwork. Not the legal kind, but the estate records. I was looking through a folder of her charitable giving history, trying to understand her philosophy. Elaine hadn't just hoarded money, she had deployed it. I found a recurring monthly donation, going back 10 years, to an organization called the Northbridge Justice Project. I looked them up. They were a small legal aid clinic in Boston that specialized in financial coercion and domestic violence cases. They helped women who were trapped in abusive marriages because they didn't have access to bank accounts. I stared at the screen. Elaine hadn't been a victim of domestic violence, as far as I knew, but she understood power. She understood that money was the primary lever of control. I realized with a jolt that Elaine hadn't just left me money to make me rich. She had left me money to make me safe. She saw my family dynamic, the financial dependency my parents cultivated in Lila, the way they tried to control me with guilt, and she recognized the pattern. She was funding my escape. I picked up the phone and called the number on the Northbridge website, Northbridge Justice Project. This is Sarah. Hi, I said. My name is Sadie Bryant. I am the executor and beneficiary of the Elaine Mercer estate. Oh, Sarah's voice warmed instantly. Ms. Mercer, we were so saddened to hear of her passing. She was our longest-standing anonymous donor. Her contributions kept our lights on during some very hard winters. I didn't know. I said, she was very private. Sarah said, she used to send a note with her check every year. It always said the same thing. For the ones who need a door to open. Tears pricked my eyes. A door to open. I would like to continue her donations. I said, my voice trembling slightly, I want to set up a recurring gift in her name, and I want to double the amount. There was a silence on the other end. Then Sarah said, softly, thank you. You have no idea what this means. You are changing lives. I hung up and felt a sliver of peace. This was the antidote to Lila's poison. Lila was using the idea of money to perform victimhood. I would use the actual money to help real victims. It was a secret victory, but it felt solid under my feet. 2 days later, my mother ambushed me. She didn't come to my house or my work. She waited for me in the parking lot of the grocery store on a Sunday afternoon. I was loading bags into my trunk when I saw her standing by her car, 3 spaces down. She looked smaller than I remembered. She was wearing a beige coat I had bought her for Christmas 2 years ago. She wasn't glaring. She looked tired, her face washed out and pale. Sadie, she said. I stiffened, gripping a carton of oat milk. Mom, I told you, I am not discussing the case. I don't want to discuss the case, she said. I just want to talk to my daughter. Can we sit? Just for a minute? In my car? It is cold out here. I hesitated. My therapist, if I had one, would have screamed no. Jillian would have screamed no. But the pull of the mother-child bond is a heavy gravity. She looked frail. 5 minutes, I said. I sat in the passenger seat of her pristine SUV. It smelled of vanilla air freshener and denial. Sadie, she began, keeping her hands on the steering wheel. This has gone too far. The lawyers, the court. It is tearing us apart. I can't sleep. Your father is not well. His blood pressure is through the roof. I'm sorry to hear that, I said, keeping my guard up. But he is the one who signed the affidavit. Mom, he started this. He is trying to protect what is right, she said, her voice trembling. But maybe there is another way. She turned to look at me. Her eyes were wet. Drop the lawsuit, I said. That is the other way. Lila can't drop it, Marlene said. She has debts. Sadie, real debts. She owes money on credit cards. She took out a loan for a business venture that didn't work out. She is drowning. If she doesn't get help, she will go under. That is not my fault. Mom, I know, Marlene said quickly. I know she makes mistakes, but she is your sister. Look, I was thinking, what if we make a deal? Just between us, no lawyers. I listened. You give Lila a lump sum. Marlene proposed. Let's say $2 million, just enough to clear her debts and set her up. And in exchange, I will make her drop the petition. We will sign whatever you want. We will issue a statement saying it was a misunderstanding, and we can start fresh. We can be a family again. Thanksgiving, Christmas. We can have it all back. I stared at her. $2 million. That was the price tag on her love. That was the cost of admission to the Bryant family holidays. She wasn't asking for justice. She was negotiating a settlement. She was a broker, trying to close a deal between two warring parties, completely ignoring the fact that one party had done nothing wrong and the other was trying to rob them. And you think Lila will agree to this? I asked. I can control Lila, Marlene said confidently. If there is cash on the table, she will take it. She just wants the money. Sadie. She doesn't actually care about the principle. The admission hung in the air like smoke. She just wants the money. And what about Dad? I asked. Does he know you are here? He wants this resolved, she said evasively. I looked at my mother. I looked at the lines around her mouth, the way her hands gripped the wheel. I realized that she didn't miss me. She missed the peace. She missed the facade of the perfect family. She was willing to sell me out to get the money, and now she was willing to sell Lila out to get the quiet. No, I said. Marlene blinked. What? No. I am not paying $2 million to make you love me again. I am not paying a ransom to my sister. If Lila has debts, she can get a job. If she wants money, she can win it in court. But I am not writing a check to buy family unity, because if I have to buy it, it isn't real. Sadie, don't be stubborn. Marlene's voice hardened. You have $15 million. $2 million is nothing to you. It is crumbs. It is the principle. Mom, Elaine didn't leave that money to Lila. She left it to me. And giving it to Lila would be a betrayal of Elaine. Elaine is dead, Marlene snapped, her face twisting. We are alive. We are your flesh and blood. How can you choose a corpse over us? Because the corpse treated me with respect, I said, and you treat me like an ATM. I opened the door and stepped out into the cold wind. Sadie, come back here, Marlene shouted. You will regret this. You will end up all alone. I slammed the door and walked back to my car. I didn't look back. I knew she was right about one thing. I would end up alone. But I was starting to realize that being alone was better than being in bad company. The next morning, Jillian called me with a tone I hadn't heard before. It was the tone of a hunter who had just found fresh tracks. Sadie, can you come in? I found something. I drove to the firm. Jillian had a whiteboard covered in timelines. So, she said, pointing to a date in red marker. October 12th. That is the date Elaine died. Right. October 15th. Jillian said. 3 days later. That is the date your father, Victor Bryant, filed paperwork to incorporate a new entity, Bryant Family Holdings, LLC. I frowned. He has always talked about starting a consulting firm. Wait, Jillian said. Look at this. She handed me a credit report. October 20th. 5 days after Elaine died. Bryant Family Holdings. LLC applied for a business line of credit from 3 different regional banks. The stated purpose of the loan? Bridge capital pending estate settlement. I stared at the paper. Expected settlement funds. $5 million. He was borrowing against the inheritance. I whispered. Before I even knew I was the beneficiary. Exactly, Jillian said. He assumed that because Elaine had no children, the money would flow to her closest friends, or maybe he thought he could bully you into handing it over immediately. He spent the money before he had it. Sadie, this explains the panic. I said, it isn't just greed, it is desperation. If he took out these loans, he probably personally guaranteed them, Jillian finished. If he doesn't get access to the estate funds, the banks will come for his house. He isn't just fighting for Lila's future, he is fighting to keep from going bankrupt. I sat back in the chair. It all made sense. The pressure, the family unity speech, the sudden rage. Victor had gambled on his ability to control me, and he was losing. But there was more. The phrase, morally unforgivable, from Elaine's letter was still ringing in my head. Jillian. I said, I found a letter from Elaine. She mentioned a specific incident involving the Mercer Harbor Foundation. Years ago, my parents were on the board. Jillian's eyes sharpened. Did she give details? She said they redirected funds. Jillian turned back to her computer. The Mercer Harbor Foundation. Dissolved in 1998. Let me see if the state archives have the dissolution papers. She typed furiously for a few minutes. Here, she said. It wasn't dissolved. It was merged into a larger preservation trust. But look at the board minutes from the final year. She spun the monitor around. It was a scanned PDF of a typewritten document. Minutes of the special board meeting. August 4th, 1998. Agenda item. Review of Gala Fund discrepancies. Note. Board members Victor and Marlene Bryant have agreed to resign effective immediately. Reimbursement of $12,400 has been made to the general fund. No further action will be taken. $12,000. I said, in 1998, that was a lot of money. They threw a gala. Jillian read from the notes. But the caterer was never paid. The venue wasn't paid. The money collected from ticket sales went into a personal account. Elaine caught them. They stole $12,000. I said, and Elaine let them go. She let them resign quietly to save their reputation. And now they are suing her estate for millions, claiming she was the one who was unethical. Jillian said, the hypocrisy is stunning. Sadie. Jillian looked at me seriously. This is the smoking gun. This proves a pattern of financial malfeasance. It destroys Victor's credibility as a witness. If we introduce this in court, his reputation in this town is incinerated. I looked at the screen. I saw my father's name. I saw the ghost of the man I thought he was. I don't want to destroy him in court. I said, I want him to stop. Then you need to show him that you have the button, Jillian said. And you need to show him you are willing to push it. I didn't take Jillian with me. I needed to do this alone. I went to my father's office. He worked as an insurance broker in a small strip mall near the highway. It was a sad, beige office with inspirational posters on the walls. I walked in at 3 o'clock on a Wednesday. The receptionist, a woman named Patty, who had known me since I was 5, looked up in surprise. Sadie, we haven't seen you in ages. Is your dad expecting you? No, I said, but he will want to see me. I walked past her desk and opened the door to his private office. Victor was sitting at his desk, staring at a spreadsheet. He looked terrible. His skin was gray, his eyes rimmed with red. He looked up, and for a second, I saw fear. Sadie, he said, standing up, you can't just barge in here. I closed the door and locked it. Sit down. Dad, I am calling the police, he blustered, reaching for the phone. I wouldn't do that. I said. I placed a folder on his desk. What is this? It is the minutes from the Mercer Harbor Foundation board meeting. August 4th, 1998. Victor froze. His hand hovered over the phone receiver. He looked at the folder as if it contained a bomb. I know about the $12,000. Dad, I know you stole ticket sales to pay for… What was it? A car? A vacation? It was a misunderstanding, he shouted, but his voice cracked. We paid it back. You paid it back because Elaine put a gun to your head. I said, she spared you. She kept your secret for 20 years, and you repaid her by trying to loot her estate and drag her name through the mud. It is ancient history. No one cares. I also know about the LLC. Dad, Bryant Family Holdings. I know about the loans you took out 5 days after she died. Victor sank back into his chair. The fight went out of him like air from a punctured tire. He slumped, looking suddenly 80 years old. I had to, he whispered. The business. The insurance margins are down. The house needs a roof. Lila needs everything. I thought it was a sure thing. I thought you would be reasonable. Reasonable? I asked. You thought I would be compliant. You thought I was still the little girl who gave up her prom dress money so Lila could have a coat. Sadie, please, he said. He looked up at me, and his eyes were pleading. It was a look I had never seen on my father's face. It was the look of a beggar. If those loans get called, we lose everything. The house, the cars, my license. Then drop the lawsuit. I said, I can't, he croaked. The lawyer. We signed a retainer. If we drop it, we still owe the fees. We are in too deep. Then you better start swimming. Dad, because if this goes to trial, I will enter these minutes into evidence. I will call the bank managers to the stand. I will expose everything. You wouldn't, he said. You are my daughter. You wouldn't destroy your own father. You tried to destroy me first. I said, you tried to get me fired. You tried to paint me as an elder abuser. You made the rules. Dad, I am just playing by them. Sadie, wait, he called as I turned to the door. I walked out. I walked past Patty, who was typing oblivious to the destruction in the next room. I walked out into the cold air and felt absolutely nothing. No triumph, no joy, just the cold. Hard realization that my father was not a monster. He was just a weak, greedy man who had built a life on lies. The retaliation came fast. The next day, a courier delivered a letter to Jillian's office. It was from Briarwood and Sloan. Dear Ms. Park, we are in receipt of your client's threats regarding ancient, inadmissible character evidence. Be advised that we are expanding our discovery request. We intend to subpoena Ms. Bryant's personal text messages and emails from the last 10 years to establish a pattern of alienation of affection. Furthermore, we are preparing a motion to freeze the estate assets pending a mental health evaluation of your client, based on erratic behavior reported by family members. They were doubling down. They were terrified. So they were attacking with everything they had. Jillian read the letter and laughed. A short, sharp bark of a laugh. They are flailing, she said. Freezing assets? Mental health evaluation? This is desperation. They are trying to scare you into settling before we can depose Victor. It is working, I said, staring at the letter. They want to read my texts? They want to read 10 years of my private life? We will fight it, Jillian said. We will file a motion for a protective order. We will claim harassment. I will turn this judge against them so hard they won't know which way is up. I nodded, but the words sounded like buzzing bees. I went home early. I walked into my apartment. It was quiet. It was always quiet. I put my keys on the counter. I looked at the mail pile. Bills, flyers, a summons. I sank down onto the kitchen floor. The linoleum was cold against my legs. I thought about Elaine. I missed her. I missed her sharp wit and her silent support. I missed the idea that someone saw me. And then I thought about my parents. I thought about the car ride with Marlene. $2 million. I thought about Victor in his office. We lose everything. I realized then that I was grieving two deaths. I was grieving Elaine. Yes. But I was also grieving the death of a hope I didn't even know I was still holding on to. I had hoped, somewhere deep in the idiot part of my heart, that if I just explained it to them, if I just showed them the truth, they would stop. I hoped that they loved me enough to stop, but they didn't. They loved themselves more. They loved their comfort more. They loved their pride more. I sat on the kitchen floor and wrapped my arms around my knees. I didn't cry. I just rocked back and forth, feeling the silence of the apartment press in on me. I was $15 million rich, and I was an orphan. The realization settled over me like a shroud. I was finally free of them, but the price of freedom was knowing, with absolute certainty, that I had never really mattered to them at all. I stayed there until the sun went down and the room turned black. Then I stood up, wiped my dry eyes, and turned on the light. If I was going to be an orphan, I would be a powerful one. I went to my desk and opened my laptop. I pulled up the email to Jillian. Do it. I typed, file the motion, schedule the deposition. No mercy. I hit send. The date for mediation was set for a Tuesday in late February. The sky was a slate of unrelenting gray, threatening a storm that wouldn't break. In the week leading up to it, I felt a strange, vibrating calmness. It was the sensation of being in the eye of a hurricane. The winds were howling on the periphery, tearing down trees and lifting roofs. But where I stood, the air was still. Jillian Park was my anchor. She prepped me not for a battle, but for a performance. Mediation is not about convincing them. Sadie. She told me, pacing her office in her sharp navy blazer, they are not convincible. Mediation is about convincing the neutral third party that we are the reasonable ones and they are the aggressors. It is about showing the other side that if they go to trial, they will lose, and they will lose publicly. So I sit there and take it? I asked. No, she said. You sit there and you speak the truth, but you speak it without heat. If Lila cries, you hand her a tissue. If Victor yells, you wait for him to finish. We do not engage in their emotional economy. We deal in facts. I went home that night to prepare. I needed to armor myself. I needed to remember exactly why I was doing this. I went to my safe, the heavy fireproof box I kept bolted to the floor of my closet. I took out the packet of letters from Elaine. I had read the one about the Mercer Harbor Foundation scandal, the one that exposed my parents as thieves. But there was more in the packet. There were pages I hadn't let myself finish because the first revelation had been so blinding. I sat on my bed. The duvet pulled around me and unfolded the rest of Elaine's final testament. My dear Sadie, there is more you should know. I suspect that when you read this, your sister will be claiming that she was the intended beneficiary, or at least that we had a relationship that justified a bequest. The truth is harder. 10 years ago, when you were 23 and Lila was 21, I attempted to set up a private scholarship fund for young women in the region. I reached out to your parents, against my better judgment, to offer both of you a chance to apply. It was a rigorous process based on financial need and work ethic. I frowned. I remembered applying for a small grant back then, something to help with my master's degree credits. I hadn't known it was Elaine. It had been anonymous. You applied. Sadie, your application was honest. You documented your 3 part-time jobs. You showed your tuition costs. You asked for exactly what you needed, down to the cent. Lila applied too. But Lila's application was a work of fiction. She claimed she was living independently. She was living in your parents' basement. She claimed she was working full-time. She was unemployed. But the worst part was that she submitted falsified tax documents. They were clumsy forgeries, likely helped along by your father, designed to make her look destitute. My breath caught in my throat. Falsified tax documents. I rejected her application. Not because of her need, but because of her character. I accepted yours. When Victor found out, he called me. He didn't apologize for the forgery. He demanded I overlook it. He told me that family helps family and that I owed it to him because of our history. He tried to pressure me. Sadie. He implied that if I didn't fund Lila, he would spread rumors that the scholarship was rigged. He tried to blackmail me into giving money to a fraud. That was the day I cut the final thread. I realized then that they were not just ethically loose, they were corrupting their children. Or at least, they were corrupting the one who would listen. You, they had already discarded. And in discarding you, they accidentally saved you. I chose you because you were the one they couldn't ruin. I lowered the paper. The silence in my bedroom felt thick. It wasn't just that they favored Lila. It was that they had actively conspired with her to cheat. While I was working double shifts at a bookstore to pay my tuition, they had built a team, Team Bryant, and the price of admission was dishonesty. I hadn't been invited to the team because I wouldn't play the game. I wasn't the black sheep. I was the witness, and they hated me for it. The mediation took place in a glass-walled conference center downtown. It was neutral ground, sterile and smelling of industrial carpet cleaner. I arrived with Jillian at 9 o'clock sharp. I wore a charcoal suit, simple and severe. I pulled my hair back. I wore no jewelry. I wanted to look like a blank slate. We entered the conference room. My family was already there. The visual impact of them hit me like a physical blow. Lila was dressed for a funeral. She wore a high-necked black dress and oversized sunglasses, which she removed slowly as we walked in. Her eyes were red-rimmed, her face pale. She looked fragile, tragic, and beautiful. It was a costume. Marlene sat next to her, clutching Lila's hand. She looked at me with a mix of sorrow and accusation, the look of a mother watching her child walk into a burning building she lit herself. Victor sat at the head of their side of the table. He looked diminished since our encounter in his office, but he was trying to inflate himself. He had a stack of files in front of him, props to suggest he had leverage. Their lawyer, a man named Mr. Sterling from Briarwood and Sloan, was slick. He had a smile that didn't reach his eyes, and a watch that cost more than my car. The mediator, a retired judge named Mrs. Gable, sat at the head of the table. She had kind eyes but a mouth that suggested she tolerated zero nonsense. "Good morning," Mrs. Gable said. "We are here to discuss the contest of the estate of Elaine Mercer. Let's begin. Mr. Sterling opened his file. He didn't look at me. He looked at the mediator. "Your Honor," he began, slipping into courtroom habit, "we are here because a grave injustice has been done. The Bryant family was close to the deceased for decades. They were her friends, her colleagues, her support system. Lila Bryant, in particular, was like a niece to Ms. Mercer." I kept my face impassive. Like a niece. Lila hadn't seen Elaine since she was 12. Mr. Sterling continued, "In the final years of her life, Ms. Mercer's faculties declined. We believe she was isolated. We believe that Sadie Bryant, using her position in the nonprofit sector and her knowledge of the estate, exerted undue influence to redirect the entirety of the assets to herself, cutting out the family that Ms. Mercer intended to support. This will is not a reflection of Elaine Mercer's wishes. It is a reflection of Sadie Bryant's greed." Lila let out a soft, choked sob. Marlene wrapped an arm around her, glaring at me. Mrs. Gable turned to Jillian. "Ms. Park?" Jillian didn't stand up. She stayed seated, her hands folded on the table. She looked bored. Elaine Mercer was of sound mind. Jillian said calmly, "Her will was drafted by a reputable firm 3 years prior to her death. Not in her final days. She had no relationship with Lila Bryant or Victor Bryant for over nearly 20 years. Sadie Bryant was named beneficiary because she was the only person in this room Miss Mercer respected." Lila slammed her hand on the table. It was a calculated outburst. "Respected?" she cried, her voice trembling. "Sadie didn't even visit her. Sadie was too busy working. I was the one who sent cards. I was the one who cared." She turned to me, tears streaming down her face. "How can you be so cold? Sadie, you sit there like a stone while Mom and Dad are suffering. You know Elaine wanted us to be taken care of. You know it." Marlene jumped in, her voice shrill. "Sadie has always been like this, distant, judgmental. She thinks she is better than everyone. We welcomed her to dinner. We tried to include her, and she lied to our faces about the money. She hid it because she knew she was stealing it. Victor cleared his throat. He tried to project the voice of reason. Now, he said, holding up a hand. Let's not get emotional. Sadie, look at me. You are my daughter. I know you didn't mean to hurt us. I know you probably thought you were doing the right thing. But you have to see that this hoarding, it isn't you. You are a good girl. You share. He was using the voice, the dad voice, the voice that used to make me apologize for things I hadn't done. Just sign the agreement. Sadie, Victor said softly, put the money in the family trust. Let me manage it. I will make sure everyone is taken care of, including you. We can end this today. The room went silent. They were all looking at me. The pressure was physical, a heavy weight pressing on my chest. Be the good girl, be the easy one, fix it. I looked at Mrs. Gable, then I looked at Jillian. Jillian gave a microscopic nod. I opened my folder. I am not signing anything. I said. My voice was quiet, but it didn't shake. And I am not holding this money for the family. Lila gasped. You monster. I pulled out a sheet of paper. I have here a log of phone calls made to Holloway and Crane Legal Group on January 12th. I said, the caller identified herself as my personal assistant. She attempted to access the estate distribution schedule using my social security number. I slid the paper across the table to the mediator. I also have an affidavit from the Director of Compliance at Larkspur Health Initiatives. I continued. It details an anonymous email received on January 15th, accusing me of financial elder abuse. The email was sent from a burner account, but the IP address traces back to a coffee shop 2 blocks from Lila's apartment. Lila froze. Her mouth opened slightly. I have text messages. I said, pulling out another stack. From Marlene Bryant, from Victor Bryant, demanding money, guilt-tripping me, and finally, threatening me. I looked at my father. On the phone, Dad, you said, if you want to play this game, be ready for the rules to change. That was the day before the anonymous report was filed at my job. Mr. Sterling shifted in his seat. These are allegations. These are timestamps. Jillian corrected him. Mrs. Gable picked up the papers. She put on her glasses and read them. Her expression tightened. She looked over her spectacles at Lila. Ms. Bryant, she said, did you impersonate your sister's employee to obtain privileged legal documents? Lila sputtered. I was just trying to help. We were worried she was being scammed. So you committed fraud to prevent a scam? Mrs. Gable asked dryly. I didn't commit fraud, Lila shrieked. It is our money. It belongs to the family. And there it was. The mask slipped. I turned to Lila. Why does it belong to the family? Lila? Elaine wasn't related to us. Because we need it, Lila yelled. She stood up, knocking her chair back. Her tragic victim act evaporated, replaced by pure, unadulterated entitlement. Because you don't deserve it. Sadie, you were always the nobody. You were the boring one in the background. Mom and Dad invested everything in me. I was the one who was supposed to make it. She pointed a shaking finger at me. You were just the spare parts. And now you have the kingdom? It is sick. It is wrong. The room rang with her words. The spare parts. Marlene reached for her. Lila. Sit down. No! Lila shouted, pulling away. Tell her. Mom, tell her she is stealing my life. I looked at my mother. Marlene wouldn't meet my eyes. She looked down at the table, her face twisting in shame. Not for what Lila said, but that she had said it out loud. I looked at Victor. He was staring at the wall, his jaw clenched. Jillian leaned forward. She pulled out the final document. Since we are discussing investments, she said, her voice cutting through the chaos. Let's discuss Bryant Family Holdings, LLC. Victor's head snapped up. Mr. Sterling frowned. What is that? It is a shell company incorporated by Victor Bryant 3 days after Elaine Mercer's death, Jillian said. She slid the credit applications across the table. And these are loan applications totaling $500,000. The collateral listed is anticipated settlement from Mercer Estate. Jillian looked at the mediator. Mr. Bryant borrowed $500,000 against an inheritance he had not yet received, and to which he had no legal claim. He spent money he didn't have. This lawsuit isn't about undue influence, Your Honor. It is about debt coverage. They are insolvent, and they are trying to use the court to raid Sadie's assets to save themselves from bankruptcy. Mr. Sterling picked up the loan documents. He read them. His face went pale. He looked at his client. Victor? He whispered. Is this true? Victor didn't answer. He seemed to shrink into his suit. He looked like a deflated balloon. It was a bridge loan, he muttered. I was going to pay it back. With my money, I said. Victor slammed his fist on the table. It is all the same pot. We are a family. What is yours is ours. That is how it works. Not anymore, I said. The mediator, Mrs. Gable, closed her folder. She took off her glasses. I have heard enough, she said. Her voice was ice cold. She looked at Mr. Sterling. Counselor, she said. If you proceed to trial with this, based on what I have seen here today, the fraud, the harassment, and the clear financial motive of your clients to fabricate a claim, I will recommend that the judge not only dismiss the case but consider sanctions for frivolous litigation, and I will ensure these loan documents are entered into the public record. Mr. Sterling looked sick. He began shoving papers back into his briefcase. We need a recess, he muttered. Lila was sobbing now, real tears of rage and panic. You ruined everything, she screamed at me. You selfish bitch. You ruined my life. I stood up. I felt 10 feet tall. I didn't ruin your life, Lila, I said. I just refused to pay for it. We walked out into the hallway. My heart was pounding, but it was a steady, strong rhythm. I had done it. I had faced them, and I hadn't blinked. Mr. Sterling dragged Victor and Lila into a side room. His voice raised in angry whispers. Marlene didn't go with them. She stood in the hallway, clutching her purse. She waited for me. Sadie, she said. I stopped. Jillian stood next to me, a silent guard dog. What? Mom? Marlene walked closer. Her face was hard. The mask of the grieving mother was gone. The mask of the peacemaker was gone. This was Marlene, the survivor, the woman who had embezzled money in 1998 and walked away clean. You feel very proud of yourself, she said softly. I feel clear. I said, you think you have won, she said. You think because you have papers and lawyers. You are safe. I am safe. Mom. Marlene stepped in close, invading my personal space. She smelled of expensive perfume and decay. We have secrets, too. Sadie, she whispered. I stared at her. What are you talking about? You think you know everything about this family, she hissed. You think you know who you are. But there are things we haven't told you. Things about before. She let the words hang there. Before. If you don't settle this, she said, her voice dropping to a serpentine murmur. If you let your father go down for those loans, I will tell the truth. I will tell everyone, and it will ruin you. It won't matter how much money you have. You will be nothing. Is that a threat? Jillian asked, stepping forward. It is a promise, Marlene said, not looking at the lawyer. Her eyes locked on mine. What truth? I asked. My voice wavered for the first time. Fix this, Sadie, Marlene said. Write the check, or I destroy the story of your life. She turned and walked away, her heels clicking on the tile floor. Steady and rhythmic, I watched her go. A cold chill crawled up my spine, colder than the winter air outside. They were lying. They had to be lying. It was just another manipulation, another lever to pull because the money lever had broken. But as I stood there in the hallway, with the adrenaline fading, I felt a seed of doubt take root. Marlene's eyes hadn't looked like she was bluffing. They looked like she was holding a grenade, and she had just pulled the pin. They were willing to invent narratives. Yes, but what if they didn't have to invent this one? I looked at Jillian. Ignore her, Jillian said. Though she looked concerned, it is a desperate last gasp. They have nothing. I nodded. Right, nothing. But as we walked to the elevator, the victory felt ash-gray in my mouth. I had won the battle of the bank accounts, but the war for my history was just beginning. The threat my mother whispered in the hallway, "I will destroy the story of your life," should have terrified me. A month ago, I would have spent sleepless nights wondering what skeleton she was planning to drag out of the closet. Was I adopted? Did I have a criminal record I didn't know about? Was there some childhood medical diagnosis they had hidden from me? But as I drove away from the mediation center, watching the city of Greyhaven blur past my window, I realized something fundamental. The story of my life had been written by them for 33 years. They had written me as the side character, the supporting role, the reliable doormat. If Marlene wanted to burn that story down, she was welcome to the matches. I was ready to write a new one. I didn't call her. I didn't ask what the secret was. I called Jillian. File the motions. I said, everything. The sanctions for frivolous litigation, the motion to dismiss, and I want to subpoena their financial records to prove the insolvency motive. Jillian's voice was bright with approval. Scorching earth strategy. I like it. I am not scorching the earth, I said, watching the gray ocean churn to my left. I am just clearing the weeds. Before the court date, I had one important piece of business to finish. I needed to anchor myself in something that wasn't a lawsuit. I needed to make the money mean something other than a weapon. I met with the director of the Northbridge Justice Project, a woman named Elena, who worked out of a cramped office in Boston that smelled of old coffee and determination. I want to set up a permanent fund, I told her. The Elaine Mercer Fund for Financial Independence. I slid a check across the desk. It was for $500,000. It was a significant portion of my liquid assets, but I didn't flinch. I want this money specifically earmarked for legal aid for victims of coercive control. I explained. For women whose partners or families are using money to trap them. Elena looked at the check, then at me. Her eyes were wide. This is transformative. Sadie, do you want to announce this? We could do a press release. It might help with your current situation. She knew about the lawsuit. It was public record now. No, I said, no press. I want it structured so that it is anonymous. But I want the deed of gift to be irrevocable. I want it to be legally impossible for my family to challenge it or claw it back. If they try to claim I am wasting the estate, I want a judge to see exactly where the waste is going. Elena smiled. A sharp, knowing smile. You are building a fortress of good deeds. I am building a wall. I said, and I am making sure the bricks are made of something they can't tear down. The day of the hearing arrived with the grim inevitability of a dental surgery. The courthouse was a brutalist concrete block in the center of the county seat. The air inside was recycled and dry, tasting of dust and anxiety. I sat at the plaintiff's table, or rather, the respondent's table, next to Jillian. My hands were folded on the oak surface. I wore navy blue. I looked boring. I looked steady. Across the aisle, the Bryant Circus had assembled. Lila was wearing a different costume today. She had abandoned the funeral black for a soft, pastel blue suit. She looked like a Sunday school teacher. She had a notebook in front of her and was scribbling furiously, performing the role of the diligent victim. Victor sat beside her, looking grave and misunderstood. He kept adjusting his tie, a nervous tic I recognized from when the bills were due. Marlene was the most dangerous. She sat in the gallery row directly behind them, clutching a handkerchief. She looked frail. She looked like a mother whose heart had been broken by an ungrateful child. If I hadn't known she was capable of blackmail, I might have felt sorry for her. The judge entered. The Honorable Justice Halloway, no relation to the law firm, was a woman in her 60s with a face carved from granite. She sat down, adjusted her robes, and looked over her glasses at the courtroom. We are here in the matter of the estate of Elaine Mercer. She said, the plaintiff, Lila Bryant, alleges undue influence and lack of testamentary capacity. The respondent, Sadie Bryant. Moves to dismiss. Mr. Sterling, the family's lawyer, stood up. He launched into his opening statement. It was a work of fiction that would have been impressive if it weren't so destructive. He painted a picture of Elaine as a confused, lonely woman and me as the scheming insider who had whispered poison in her ear. Sadie Bryant, he intoned, pointing a finger at me, used her professional skills in the nonprofit sector to manipulate an elderly woman. She isolated Ms. Mercer from the family she loved, the family she considered her own flesh and blood, and in doing so, she stole the legacy intended for Lila Bryant. Lila wiped a tear. Marlene sniffled audibly. I stared straight ahead. I didn't react. When it was our turn, Jillian didn't give a speech. She just stated the facts. Your Honor, Elaine Mercer died with full capacity. Her will was drafted years ago. The plaintiff has no standing, no relationship with the deceased, and is using this court to solve a personal debt crisis. Then came the testimony. I was called to the stand. I walked up the 3 steps and sat in the wooden chair. The microphone hummed. Ms. Bryant, Mr. Sterling asked. Prowling before the bench, is it true you hid the inheritance from your parents? I didn't hide it, I said, my voice clear. I chose not to disclose the full amount immediately because I was processing the news, and because I know my family's history with money. You didn't trust them? No, because you knew you had obtained it unfairly? Objection. Jillian said lazily, argumentative, sustained. The judge said. I looked at Mr. Sterling. I didn't trust them because I knew they would view it as their own. I said, Mr. Sterling pivoted. You claim your sister has no relationship with Miss Mercer, but isn't it true that Miss Mercer considered mentoring both of you? Yes, I said. So she cared for Lila? She cared about integrity. I said, Mr. Sterling paused. He didn't like that answer. He tried to move on. But Jillian, on cross-examination, circled back to it. Ms. Bryant? Jillian asked, standing tall. Can you explain the history of the mentorship program? I took a breath. This was it. The first truth. 10 years ago, Elaine Mercer offered both my sister and me a chance to apply for a scholarship. I said, I submitted my application with my pay stubs from the bookstore. Lila submitted hers with falsified tax documents. The courtroom went silent. Lila's head snapped up. Falsified? Jillian asked. Yes, I continued. My father, Victor Bryant, helped her create documents that made it appear she was destitute and living independently. When in fact she was living at home and supported by him, Elaine discovered the forgery. She rejected Lila's application. Liar! Lila shouted from her table. Ms. Bryant, the judge snapped. You will remain silent. I continued, looking at the judge. My father then called Elaine and attempted to pressure her into giving Lila the money anyway, threatening to damage her reputation if she didn't. That is why Elaine cut ties with the family. That is why she never spoke to them again. The judge turned her gaze to Victor. He was staring at the table, his face a mottled red. Jillian then moved to the recent events. I detailed the impersonation attempt, the caller claiming to be my assistant. I detailed the anonymous report to Larkspur Health Initiatives. I presented the screenshots of the text messages. I didn't call them names. I didn't say they were evil. I just said, on January 15th, my father threatened me. On January 16th, a report was filed. The timeline was a noose, and with every sentence, I pulled it tighter. Then came the final blow. Jillian stood up. Your Honor, we would like to introduce one final piece of evidence regarding the credibility of the plaintiff's witnesses, specifically Victor and Marlene Bryant, who claim that they were the intended beneficiaries of Ms. Mercer's estate due to their close ethical friendship. She handed a file to the bailiff. These are the archived minutes from the Board of Directors of the Mercer Harbor Foundation, dated August 4th, 1998. Marlene, sitting in the gallery, let out a small, strangled sound. Victor looked like he was having a cardiac event. Jillian read from the document. In 1998, Victor and Marlene Bryant were asked to resign from the board after an internal audit revealed that $12,400 in gala ticket sales had been diverted to their personal accounts. Elaine Mercer, the chair of the board, allowed them to resign to avoid criminal prosecution, on the condition that they repay the funds and never contact the foundation again. The courtroom was absolutely still. Even the court reporter stopped typing for a split second. $12,000, the judge repeated. In 1998, yes, Your Honor, Jillian said. This establishes a pattern. The parents who claim their daughter was the victim of undue influence are the same people who embezzled from the deceased 20 years ago. The animosity between Elaine Mercer and the Bryant family was not caused by Sadie Bryant. It was caused by their own theft. Mr. Sterling looked at his clients. He looked at the documents. He looked like a man who realized his check was going to bounce. The judge looked at Victor. Mr. Bryant, she said, her voice dangerously soft. Is this true? Victor stood up. He tried to speak, but his voice failed him. He coughed. It was a misunderstanding. We paid it back. Sit down, the judge ordered. She looked at Lila. Ms. Bryant, were you aware that your parents were forced off Miss Mercer's board for embezzlement? Lila looked at her parents. She looked terrified. No, she whispered. They told me. They told me she was just a bitch. The judge took off her glasses. We are going to take a 15-minute recess, she said. Counsel, I suggest you use this time to consider your position. And Mr. Sterling? I am very close to entertaining the motion for sanctions. The hallway was chaos. We walked out, Jillian and I, feeling the adrenaline crash. We stood near the water fountain, keeping our distance from the Bryant huddle, but the huddle was exploding. You lied to me! Lila was screaming. Her voice echoed off the marble walls. People, clerks, other lawyers, a security guard, stopped to watch. Keep your voice down, Victor hissed, grabbing her arm. Don't touch me. Lila shoved him away. You told me she owed us. You told me Sadie stole it. But you stole it. You stole from her. Lila, please, Marlene begged, trying to shield them from the onlookers. Lila turned and saw me. Her face was a ruin of mascara and panic. She walked toward me. Jillian stepped in front, but I put a hand on Jillian's arm. It's okay. Lila stopped 3 feet away. Her hands were shaking. You knew, she said. You knew about the embezzlement. I found out last week. I said, why didn't you tell me? She demanded. Why did you let me walk in there and look like an idiot? Because you wouldn't have listened. Lila, you would have spun it. You would have said I was making it up. You needed to hear it from a judge. She stared at me. The anger was draining out of her, replaced by a cold, hard reality, the reality of debts she couldn't pay, the reality of a lawsuit she was about to lose, the reality of a life built on lies. Sadie, she whispered. Her tone changed. It became the wheedling, desperate tone of the sister who needed a car, a dress, a loan. Sadie, look, this is bad. They are going to sanction us. Dad is broke. I am broke. That isn't my problem. I said, just give me something, she pleaded. Her voice dropped so low only I could hear. I am not asking for half anymore. Just give me $500,000. I will drop the suit. I will sign whatever. I just need to pay off the credit cards. Please, I am your sister. I looked at her. I looked at the blue suit, the carefully styled hair, the eyes that had looked at me with contempt for 30 years and now looked at me as a wallet. I thought about the $500,000 I had just given to the Northbridge Justice Project. I thought about the women who would use that money to escape people exactly like Lila. I am my own sister first. I said, what? No. I said, Lila's face contorted. You selfish... Mr. Sterling ran up, breathless. Lila, stop talking to her. We need to go back in. The judge is ready. Lila looked at me one last time. It wasn't a look of family. It was the look of a stranger who hates you because you have what they want. She turned and marched back into the courtroom. The ruling was swift. Judge Holloway didn't waste time. She sat on the bench, her face stern. I have reviewed the evidence, she said. The plaintiff's claim of undue influence is entirely without merit. The testimony regarding Miss Mercer's prior relationship with the family and the documented reasons for its termination clearly establishes that the deceased had valid, rational reasons for excluding the plaintiff and her parents from her estate. She looked at Mr. Sterling. The motion to dismiss the contest of the will is granted. She said, I let out a breath I had been holding for 3 months. However, the judge continued, shuffling a paper, regarding the motion for sanctions and legal fees. While the court finds the plaintiff's behavior reprehensible, particularly the impersonation of the respondent's staff, I am technically dismissing the undue influence claim with prejudice. I am leaving open a narrow window for a procedural accounting review of the estate's administrative expenses, strictly to ensure tax compliance. She looked at me. Ms. Bryant, you have won the war, but the law allows any interested party to request a basic audit. I am granting a 30-day window for that, and that alone. If the plaintiff wishes to pay for an independent audit of the estate's tax filings, she may do so, but the distribution of assets is confirmed. The money is yours. She banged the gavel. Court is adjourned. It wasn't a total, obliterating victory. They weren't dragged off in handcuffs. They weren't ordered to pay me millions in damages, mostly because they didn't have millions to pay. And the judge had left them a tiny, face-saving crumb, the right to audit the taxes. It meant Lila could annoy me for another month with paperwork, but as I stood up, I realized it didn't matter. The big weapon, the claim that I was a thief, the claim that the money wasn't mine, was broken. I walked out of the courtroom. Marlene was waiting by the exit. Victor was sitting on a bench, head in his hands. Lila was arguing with Mr. Sterling. Marlene stepped into my path. She looked at me. The threat she had made, I will destroy your story, hung between us. Well, she said, you won. Are you happy? I am relieved. I said, you know, she said, her voice trembling with suppressed rage. We really are broke. Sadie, your father, those loans, we might lose the house. I looked at her. I looked at the woman who had demanded $2 million to love me. Then you should probably sell the house. Mom, it is a seller's market. Her eyes narrowed. You are cold. Elaine made you cold. Elaine made me see. I corrected. I leaned in closer. And Mom? About that secret. About the story you were going to tell to ruin me. Marlene flinched. She looked suddenly unsure. Go ahead, I said softly. Tell it. Post it on Facebook. Call the papers. Because whatever it is, whatever lie or truth you have hidden, it can't hurt me anymore. I don't need your approval. I don't need your reputation. And I certainly don't need your family. Marlene stared at me. Her mouth opened, then closed. She realized, perhaps for the first time, that she had no leverage. The secret only had power if I cared what they thought. She stepped back. She looked small. Goodbye. Mom, I said. I walked past her. I pushed open the heavy double doors of the courthouse and stepped out. The gray sky had broken. The clouds were parting, revealing a strip of pale, winter blue. The air was cold and sharp, biting my cheeks. It felt like oxygen. I walked down the steps, my heels clicking on the concrete. I took my phone out of my purse. I had a text from Tessa. Well, do we drink champagne or tequila? I smiled. Champagne, I typed. Expensive champagne. I didn't look back at the courthouse. I didn't look back at the parents who had stolen from a charity, or the sister who had tried to steal my life. I walked toward my car, toward my townhouse, toward the fund that would help women escape, toward a future that was unwritten and entirely, beautifully mine. The war wasn't over. Wars like this never really end. They just turn into cold standoffs. But the siege was broken. I got into my car, turned the key, and drove away. Thank you for listening to Sadie's story. It is a story about money, yes, but mostly it is a story about the price of freedom and the courage it takes to walk away from the people who are supposed to love you. I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Where are you listening from? Have you ever had to set a hard boundary with a family member? How would you have handled Lila and the parents? Please subscribe to Revenge Stories for more tales of justice, karma, and the people who fight back. Share your thoughts in English below. I read every single one. Until next time.